"Here you go," she said, handing him a towel and pointing to the bathroom. "If you need anything, just let me know." Jake smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "Thanks, Claire, for everything." Claire lingered by the doorway, feeling the swirl of emotions inside her, the pull of something forbidden yet undeniable. As she closed the door behind him, she leaned against it for a moment, her heart pounding. She told herself it was just a fleeting feeling, a trick of the lonely night and the storm. But deep down she knew that nothing would be the same after this. Because sometimes, in the quiet and the dark, two hearts can find each other when they least expect it. And when that happens, life changes forever. The night lingered quietly after Jake had gone to bed, or at least Claire hoped he had. She sat in her dimly lit kitchen, the soft hum of the storm still audible through the windows. Her thoughts raced, swirling around that evening's moments, the way Jake looked at her, the way her own heart responded with a strange warmth and unease. She was an adult, she reminded herself firmly. A grown woman who had known heartbreak and loss. And Jake was still young. Her cousin's teenage son, someone she'd known since he was a boy she had helped raise in some ways, who'd once depended on her for comfort and guidance. Now, the lines felt dangerously thin. Claire poured herself a glass of water and stared into the clear liquid, trying to steady her thoughts. When she finally went to check on Jake, she found the guest room door slightly ajar. She hesitated but pushed it open gently. Jake sat on the edge of the bed, his head bowed. When he looked up, there was a vulnerability there that struck Claire deeply. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. Claire nodded, stepping inside. They sat across from each other, space between them suddenly charged with a tension neither wanted to acknowledge. "Jake," Claire began carefully, "I care about you a lot. Your family to me." Jake's eyes searched hers. "I know. And I care about you too. More than just family, I think." Claire's heart hammered in her chest. "But you're 19. I'm 35. And I've always thought of you as my cousin's boy, not a man." Jake swallowed hard. "I'm not a boy anymore. I've been trying to tell myself that for years, and I feel things I didn't expect." The air between them was thick, filled with unspoken desires, with longing that had slowly built beneath years of silence and distance. Claire stood, trying to create space. "This is complicated, maybe even wrong." Jake stood too, his voice steady but gentle. "I don't want to hurt you, Claire, or anyone else, but I can't pretend anymore. Not with you." She looked away, tears brimming at the corners of her eyes. "I've spent so long being alone," she whispered, "and now here you are. And it feels like everything I thought was safe is shifting." Jake took a tentative step closer. "I'm not here to break you. I just want to be honest." Claire's breath hitched. The room felt smaller, the storm outside distant compared to the storm inside her. "I should go to bed," Shay said suddenly, trying to regain control. Jake nodded but didn't move away. "I'll sleep on the couch," he said quietly. "So, you don't feel uncomfortable?" She managed a small, grateful smile. "Thank you." But as Claire walked down the hallway, the weight of what had almost been Nan, what might still be pressed heavily on her back in her room. She lay awake for hours, her mind replaying every glance, every word, every brush of a hand. What was this feeling? Desire? Forbidden attraction? Or something deeper, more fragile? She thought of Jake's face in the morning light, the way he had looked at her. Like she was the only person in the world. It frightened her. And yet, it awakened something she thought had been lost forever. The next morning came slow and heavy, the storm finally easing into a quiet drizzle. Claire woke to an empty house. The sun streamed through her window, soft and warm, but her heart felt cold. She found Jake in the living room, sitting quietly on the couch with a small note beside his bag. He looked up when she entered, his eyes calm but distant. "I didn't sleep," he said. "I just sat here thinking." Claire sat beside him, Unsure of what to say last night changed everything. Jake continued, not because of what almost happened, but because I realized something important. Claire's heart tightened. What is it? Jake's voice was steady, filled with quiet strength. Love doesn't always look like we expect. Sometimes it comes softly, quietly, and sometimes it has to leave. He stood, picked up his bag, and paused by the door. I'm leaving now, he said. But I'll carry this night with me forever. Claire watched him go, tears streaming silently down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the bittersweet truth of love that's both beautiful and impossible. She knew that some lines were drawn for a reason, yet sometimes the heart refuses to see them clearly, and in that silence, she found a strange kind of peace. The dawn crept softly through the curtains of Claire's farmhouse, painting the room with pale gold and lavender hues. Outside, the world was fresh and quiet. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clear sky and a gentle breeze that stirred the branches of the ancient trees surrounding the house. Claire lay awake in bed, eyes open, heart heavy with the weight of the night before. The hours had passed in restless thought, turning memories and feelings over again and again, like a song stuck on a delicate note. She had hoped, somehow, that morning would bring clarity or relief. But instead, the emotions from the night lingered, like a whispered secret between two souls. She thought of Jake, his soft voice, the steady honesty in his eyes, the fragile hope he had carried with him. He was gone now, leaving behind a silence that felt louder than the storm ever had. Claire rose quietly, slipping into a soft robe and making her way to the kitchen. The house felt empty without him, the small sounds of his presence, the warmth of his company, all vanished with the dawn. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, staring out at the dewy grass glistening in the early light. The world outside was waking up, moving forward, but Claire felt caught in a still moment, suspended between what had been and what might never be. Her phone buzzed softly on the counter. Breaking the silence, she glanced at the screen and saw a message from Rachel, her cousin. Thanks for letting Jake stay. I'm sorry it was so sudden. Hope you're okay. Claire smiled faintly and typed back. It was good to see him. We both needed it, I think. As she set the phone down, her mind wandered back to Jake's words. The idea that love can be complicated, painful, and sometimes it has to leave. She understood that now more than ever. The boundaries they had danced around last night were real and necessary, no matter how much her heart ached otherwise. Later that morning, Claire took a walk through the forest behind her house. The scent of wet earth and pine filled her lungs, and the crunch of leaves beneath her boots grounded her. The trees, tall and silent, seemed to listen as she whispered her thoughts into the wind. She thought about the loneliness that had wrapped around her like a familiar blanket for so long, and how Jake's unexpected visit had pulled at threads she hadn't realized were frayed. It wasn't just about desire or attraction. It was about connection, about being seen and understood, about the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, love could come again. Even after heartbreak, Claire returned home with a renewed sense of peace. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be simple. The ache of longing wouldn't vanish overnight, but she also knew she was stronger for having felt it at all. That afternoon, as she prepared dinner, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Rachel standing there, her expression warm but serious. I wanted to thank you again, Rachel said, stepping inside. Jake needed more than just a place to stay last night. He needed someone to remind him he's not alone. Claire nodded. It's a good kid, struggling, but good. Rachel sighed. He's been through a lot. I think he's feeling lost right now. They sat together at the kitchen table, sharing stories and memories of Jake, the shy boy who had grown into a thoughtful young man searching for his way. For the first time in a long while, Claire felt the comfort of family, not just in blood, but in shared experience and understanding as the evening settled around them. Claire found herself reflecting on what she had learned, that love isn't always simple or easy. Sometimes it's complicated, bittersweet, and requires difficult choices. But Lovreal Love also has the power to heal. And maybe, just maybe, the night Jake stayed had opened a door in Claire's heart that she wasn't ready to close. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to face it with courage, hope, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing she had dared to feel again. The end. Claire Wilson was used to quiet Friday nights. At 35, living alone in a cozy Vermont farmhouse. Her evenings had settled into a gentle rhythm. A warm dinner, a little music, folding laundry by the fireplace, and maybe a cup of chamomile tea before bed. The world outside could be loud and messy, but inside her home everything was calm. That evening, though a cold October rain lashed against the windows, wind howled through the trees, bending the branches and rattling the shutters, Claire glanced outside while folding a soft stack of towels. Autumn had come quickly this year, sooner than she expected, down with it. A creeping sense of loneliness. She didn't like to call it that. She was independent, not lonely, at least that's what she told herself. But some nights, especially stormy ones, the silence pressed a little heavier on her chest. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She dried her hands and checked it. Text from Rachel, her cousin. "Hey Claire, can Jake crash at your place tonight? Last minute thing? I'll explain later. Please say yes." Claire blinked at the screen, surprised. Jake, Rachel's son? She hadn't seen him in a long time, not since the Christmas dinner 2 years ago. Back then, he was still just a shy, lanky teenager who barely looked up from his phone. She remembered him sitting quietly at the far end of the dining table while the rest of the family talked and laughed. He had a softness in his eyes that reminded Claire of herself at that age, observant, thoughtful, maybe a little lonely too. Now apparently he was 19, almost 20, practically an adult. Claire typed back, "Of course, tell him to come. Over whenever he needs, I'll be here." She cleaned up the kitchen, turned on the gas fireplace, and lit a couple of candles in the living room, just in case the power went out. The storm was gaining strength by the minute. Around 8:30 p.m., there was a knock at the door. Claire opened it, and there he was, Jake. Taller than she remembered, broad shoulders, messy brown hair soaked from the rain, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. His blue hoodie clung to him, and his cheeks were red from the cold. "Hi," he said, offering a sheepish smile. "Come in. You're freezing," Claire said. Stepping aside, he stepped into the warmth of the house, shaking out his jacket. Claire handed him a towel and took his bag. "What happened? Is everything okay?" Jake shrugged, drying his hair. "My mom and her boyfriend had some kind of fight. She didn't want me in the middle of it. She told me to get out for the night. I didn't know where else to go." "Well, you're welcome here any time," she said, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "You hungry?" He nodded a little. Claire quickly heated up some leftover vegetable soup and made grilled cheese sandwiches. They sat at the small kitchen table, the wind outside howling louder now, making the windows creak. Jake ate slowly, eyes scanning the room like he was remembering something. "This place hasn't changed," he said softly. "I used to love coming here when I was little." Claire smiled. "Yeah, I didn't think you even remembered." "I remember everything," he replied, meeting her eyes. There was a weight to the way he looked at her, not heavy, just deep. Claire felt her stomach flip, and she quickly looked away. Focusing on her soup, after dinner, they moved to the living room. Claire wrapped herself in a soft fleece blanket, curling up on the couch. Jake sat across from her on the armchair by the fireplace. The room glowed with a soft golden warmth, while shadows danced gently on the walls. He talked more than she expected, about school, about taking a break from college, about how he didn't know what he wanted yet. He was honest, earnest, in a way that was rare for someone his age. Claire found herself relaxing. She hadn't had this kind of conversation in a long time. There was no awkwardness between them, no forced small talk. Just two people sharing the same space, the same silence, the same storm. "I used to think adults had everything figured out." Jake said after a while, his voice low and thoughtful. But now that I'm almost there. I get it. No one really does, do they? Claire chuckled. No, we're all just trying to make sense of things one day at a time. He smiled at that, then looked at her with a softness that made her breath catch. You always seem to have it together, though. You were the only one at family dinners who didn't treat me like I was invisible. Claire looked into his eyes and saw something flicker there. Not gratitude, not admiration. Something deeper. It was subtle. It's barely there. But it made her chest tighten. She shook it off, telling herself she was imagining it. You should get some rest, she said gently. Guest room's ready. Jake stood up and picked up his duffel bag, pausing before heading down the hall. Thanks, Claire, for everything. I really mean it. She gave him a small smile. Good night, Jake. Good night, he said. And with that, disappeared down the hallway. Claire stayed by the fire a little longer, trying to shake the strange feeling in her chest. There was nothing to think about, nothing to worry about. It was just a boy, staying the night because he had nowhere else to go. And yet, her heart was still beating faster than it should have been. The night deepened outside Claire's farmhouse, storm continuing to rage with fierce determination. Its power flickered, once before dying completely, plunging the house into darkness, except for the flickering orange glow of the fireplace Claire had lit earlier. The cozy room felt like a small island of warmth against the cold chaos of the storm outside. Claire pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders and settled back on the couch. Her mind, however, wasn't as calm as the fire's gentle crackle. The memory of Jake's blue eyes lingered in her thoughts the way they had held something she couldn't quite name, something raw and honest. She told herself to push it aside. It was just a kid in her eyes, her cousin's teenage son. It's nothing more. But the heart is not always easily controlled. Just then, Jake reappeared from the hallway. His footsteps were quiet on the wooden floor. And when he entered the room, Claire noticed how the firelight caught the lines of his face, making his eyes sparkle with a strange intensity. Power's out, he said simply, settling down in the armchair across from her. Yeah, Claire replied, smiling softly. Looks like the storm's going to keep us company for a while. Jake nodded and looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. The soft candlelight, the stacks of books on the shelves, the old framed photos of family moments all. The things that had made Claire's house a home. It's nice here, Jake said. Claire felt a warmth inside her that had little to do with the fire, for a long moment. They sat in silence, watching the flames dance, and listening to the wind rattle the windows. The quiet between them was comfortable. But beneath it was a current of something new and unspoken. Finally, Jake broke the silence. Claire, he began, his voice low. I'm sorry for crashing here like this. I know I probably caught you off guard. Claire shook her head. No, it's okay. You needed a place and your family. He gave a small smile. But there was something more in his vulnerability Claire hadn't seen before. I don't know what to do, he confessed. Everything feels confusing right now. School, family, me. I'm supposed to be an adult, but I feel like I'm just floating, waiting for something to happen. Claire's heart ached for him. She knew exactly how that felt. The emptiness of waiting. The loneliness of uncertainty. You're not alone, she said gently. I've felt that way more times than I can count. Jake looked at her then, really looked. The kind of look that seemed to see past the surface, past the polite smiles and everyday routines. I've always admired you, Claire, he said quietly. You're strong. You've handled things that would break most people. Claire felt a flush rising to her cheeks, partly from the unexpected compliment and partly from the way his gaze held hers. With an intensity that made her breath catch, she cleared her throat. Thank you, Jake. That means a lot. The fire crackled, and for a moment, the room felt charged with a fragile kind of energy, a something electric yet tender dot. Jake shifted in his seat and leaned forward slightly. You know, You were the only person who ever really talked to me when I was younger. Not just my aunt or my mom's cousin, but you. Like I mattered." Claire swallowed hard. Her mind raced. This was new territory, and it scared her. "I remember those family dinners," Jake continued. "Everyone was busy talking about their own lives, but you always made me feel seen. And for a long time, that was enough." Claire looked down at her hands, feeling the weight of those words. Suddenly, the room felt smaller, closer. She glanced up and caught Jake's eyes again, and this time the unspoken emotion between them was unmistakable. A quiet longing stirred in Claire's heart, a yearning for connection, for understanding, for something more than the lonely silence she had grown so used to. Jake noticed it too, the way her eyes lingered a moment longer, the soft flush on her cheeks, the subtle tremble in her voice when she spoke. He wanted to reach out, to bridge the invisible gap that had suddenly narrowed between them, but he held back, afraid of crossing a line. Claire stood up abruptly, trying to break the tension. "I should get you settled," she said, forcing a lightness into her voice. Jake nodded and stood as well. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not?" Claire reassured him quickly. She led him down the hallway to the guest room. Small but comfortable space with soft linens and a window that overlooked the wild forest beyond.